This is Australia at its most lush and tropical. It's here that we find most of the country's spectacular gatherings of birds, fruit bats, and man-eating crocodiles. Hi, I'm George Page for Nature. And the reason this part of Australia and the magnificent Kakadu National Park is so different from the rest of the country is because it's so far north that it extends into the Asian monsoon belt and receives a heavy annual rainfall. In fact, northern Australia is not all that far from Southeast Asia, and many of the animals here cross the narrow straits separating the two continents. Often they island hopped across Sumatra, Borneo, and New Guinea to get here. But just to the north of here, at Obiri Rock, there's evidence that 40 to 50,000 years ago, another group of immigrants made that journey from Asia. Those newcomers had a great and powerful influence on the nature of Australia. And this is the evidence that they were here. Human song first sounded in Australia at least 50,000 years ago. It heralded great changes for the island continent. The origins of the first Australians are lost in time. They came from somewhere in Asia, gradually drifting south over many generations. They found here a mix of the known and the new, swamps where crocodiles lurked, like those of Southeast Asia, but also much that was strange. Like the regions of their forefathers, tropical Australia was ruled by monsoons, but here the annual swing from flood to dry was far less predictable, far more savage. The newcomers had to learn new ways, interpret new patterns, and weave them into a system of beliefs to explain this new land. They identified with certain animals and made them powerful tribal totems. The first Australians were coastal wanderers. Their descendants on the northern shores still call themselves saltwater people. They never moved far from the familiar sea, that never-failing provider of good things to eat. And to their new home, they brought their most powerful ally, fire. With fire, Aborigines became a potent force on the land, ultimately changing the face of Australia. Before people came here, lightning was the only source of fire. They believed lightning was made by Namargon, the lightning man. Namargon's stone axes hit the clouds to make sparks and thunder. These unsettled storms precede the true wet season, harbingers of the monsoon to come. The Aborigines called it Gunamalong, one of the many seasons they came to recognize. Gunamalong is also signaled by fainter sounds, which call freshwater crocodiles to their nests. The cries come from inside eggs buried in the riverbank some 3 months earlier. They summon the females to excavate the nests, helping to release their offspring. Not all the eggs survive. Some are dug up by human foragers who find them delicious. But enough are left to ensure that there'll continue to be crocodiles and supplies of eggs. Though capable of making it to the water on their own, it's much safer and quicker for mother to carry them. The sound of sand being scraped away and the calls of the newly hatched stimulate the rest of the brood to break free. As soon as the maternal jaws release them, the young crocodiles launch their lifelong hunting career, starting on insects and working their way up. But they also make attractive morsels themselves, and the mother keeps watch, especially for other crocodiles coming to investigate with cannibalistic intent. Northern Australia lies on the edge of the monsoonal belt, and as the monsoon season approaches, the weather becomes wildly erratic. Dry spells alternate with drenching rains. The soils saturate, pools fill, rivers flow. They flow out of the great Kakadu escarpment, looming over the plains, the edge of a vast and ancient plateau. Its worn and cragged surface makes an enormous catchment that feeds permanent pools and rivers. Millions of years of monsoonal rain scoured and sculptured sandstone, and rivers carved deep gorges. It's Gujuk now, the true wet season in January and February. It's a barren and forbidding place where Aborigines rarely come, but it's also the source of much fertility as the waters wash the sediments down to the lowlands. The Cascades feed broad rivers which meander across the northern plains, and the rising waters set the rhythm of life for many animals. The pig-nosed turtle is one of them. As the river rises, it cues a new generation into the world. They spend most of their time submerged, but they have to come out to bury their eggs. 3 months earlier, they dug their nests in the riverbank. The eggs of crocodiles drown if they're flooded, but pig-nosed turtles actually wait until they're completely immersed before breaking out. As the water rises, oxygen to the shell is cut off. Eager for air, they emerge into conditions best suited to their survival. Fast-flowing water to aid dispersal, and a wealth of food. Magpie geese gather to breed, a signal to people that there's an abundance of goose eggs to collect. The spike rushes grow tall in the swamps. The geese trample them into floating nests. Crops of wild rice shoot up, and in the steaming heat their seeds ripen swiftly to provide rich nourishment for the goslings. But it won't last. Parents and chicks are racing against time, for the youngsters need to grow strong enough to fly before the swamps begin to dry out, and they have to move elsewhere. The breeding of these ancient birds follows the rise and fall of the waters, a seasonal signpost that guided the Aborigines on their walkabouts, spiritual wanderings in the bush. The season rolls on. The storms of Gujuk sweep in almost daily now, and with ever-increasing force. Hot winds, heavy with moisture, drive in from the northwest, piling the clouds into mountains, hurling sheets of water across the landscape. Day after day, this is the pattern of Gujuk. The very sky turns to water. In ancient times, as the plains became impassable to all but water birds and aquatic creatures, the people moved to higher ground, into the shelter of the escarpment's caves and overhangs. The long, wet days gave them time to reflect on their place in this world. In painting the rock walls, the people celebrated their deep sense of affinity with the land. The record goes back unbroken for tens of thousands of years. The torrential downpour sends so much water rushing across the plains that even higher ground disappears under the swirling floods. The swiftly rising waters send creatures scrambling for whatever precarious perch they can find. This sand goanna will need to hang on for many hours before the floods subside. Even good swimmers, like highly venomous king brown snakes and water goannas, may find the currents too strong. A mass of termites is swept away. Odd companions, a python shares its refuge with a water rat. In this common crisis, normal predatory instincts are suspended. The floodplains merge into one vast, shallow lake. The spreading waters replenish their fertility with sediments washed down from the escarpment. But while the rains recharge North Australia's biological power, they also bring hardship to many animals. Rocky outcrops become islands and maroon the wallabies that normally graze down on the plains. Until the flood subsides, these short-eared rock wallabies will have a lean time of it. Over time, the lives of animals and people wove into a complex fabric of myth and custom. The rock paintings became the icons of Aboriginal belief, as well as the practical inventory of their most important creatures. The rainbow serpent, mythical carver of rivers and gorges as it slid across the landscape, intertwines with pictures of animals hunted for food. The paintings also trace changing climate. As sea levels rose and estuaries extended inland, images of the ocean-going barramundi fish became more frequent. In 2,000 generations of human occupation, the view from the escarpment changed as floodplains extended and retreated. But the relentless rhythm of the tropical monsoons continued to rule all of life here. The mating call of the green tree frog adds to the cacophony that marks the height of the wet season. They need standing water, and there are now plenty of pools where the females can spawn. She lifts her rear end to scatter the eggs. The male, clasping her firmly from behind, covers them with sperm. Of the hundreds of eggs, only a few will survive. The rest will feed other creatures. Deep within the escarpment, animals breed. The walls of some caves crawl with bats. More than 100,000 bentwings crowd together, all of them females with their young. The females came here early in the wet season to give birth. Now their offspring are on the verge of flight. But for the moment, they're still left behind in a nursery cared for by a few mothers, while the rest make their evening exodus, streaming out to feed. The nursery is far from safe. Below the bat-covered walls, green tree frogs lurk, waiting for a baby to fall. The young bats are tiny. Even so, they make quite a mouthful for the frog, which is about the size of a man's fist. The dense flow of bats attracts other predators. Pythons and venomous snakes cast around in the stream like lethal fishing rods. The snake throws a deadly coil around the victim, then dislocates its own jaws to swallow the bat whole. The meal will last the snake many weeks. The streams of breeding bats are an endless source of food at this time of Gudjuk. The comings and goings merge into the flow of the seasons, part of the nature of Australia since they arrived from Asia 25 million years ago. They're especially abundant in the tropical north, flying foxes in particular. At dawn, tens of thousands return to their tree camps to roost for a day. They're the largest of the bats, very different from the small insect hunters that inhabit the caves. Their flesh is as sweet and succulent as the flowers and fruits upon which they feed, and is highly prized by human hunters. Flying foxes, also called fruit bats, are found throughout Southeast Asia, and raiding their camps remained an important part of life for the Aborigines of northern Australia. Fruit bats have their own seasonal rhythm. As the monsoonal rains fall away and the end of the wet season draws near, males begin to feel the urge to mate, and females respond eventually. Having to mate upside down might seem to add an extra dimension of difficulty, but for the fruit bats, there's no other way. The pair may mate 4 times in half an hour and several more times during the day. Soon the bats shift camp, to follow the movable feast of flowers and fruits as the season turns. With the heaviest rains past, the Aboriginal year moves to Bongarong, a time of brooding calm pierced by sudden storms. The water lilies flower in the paper bark swamps, and on their broad leaves, jacana eggs are about to hatch. While the cockbird broods the eggs, his mate jealously keeps other hens away. A few days later, the jacana chicks take their first tentative measure of this floating, leafy world. The father has a wonderful way of keeping his chicks safe. At the first sign of danger, he calls and sweeps them under his wing. Only their legs betray their presence, and those long toes that make jacanas seem to walk on water. In these closing days of the wet season, the humid air is heavy with the scent of flowers and vibrant with insects. In a final spurt, the speargrass shoots to twice a man's height, but the storms of Bongarong will soon knock it down. For the early people and their descendants, this was a good time of year to collect wild honey. As the season slowly dries out, fire begins to dominate the scene. Fire to drive game animals, to clear out dense underbrush, to release nutrients into the soil and produce succulent new plant growth for grazing animals. Though the native bees are small and have no sting, flame and smoke help clear the way into the sweet heart of the nest. Fire sticks were also put to larger use, and the effects change the very essence of the landscape. When the winds turn cool and blow from the southeast, it's yege, the burning time. Fire cleaned the country of speargrass, which has been smashed into an impenetrable tangle by the storms of Bongarong. Natural fires sparked by lightning mostly flared toward the end of the dry season. The Aborigines burned early in the season, before too much dry fuel had accumulated. They lit their first fires while dew still fell. It dampened the flames at night. Over the years, Aboriginal burning created a rich variety of plant growth in age and species, good habitat for many game animals. The smoldering aftermath brings immediate benefits to the hunter-gatherers, human and animal alike. Charred insects make rich pickings and bring game within a spear's throw. Alert eyes spot barbecued meals of small lizards and snakes. Scattering fresh leaves over the embers protects human feet. Scavenging birds have nothing between theirs and the glowing cinders. The patterns of Aboriginal burning brought lasting change to the nature of Australia. Hunting birds are among the many animals that prospered as fire followers, and the fire-tolerant eucalypts thrived where plants sensitive to scorching could not. The woodland seemed dead after fire, but within days, the gums green up again. The spread of the eucalypts was aided by another force, less obvious and dramatic than fire, but just as powerful. These castles of clay conceal that hidden power. They're the strongholds of termites. And it was fire that destroyed the bark's defenses and opened the way for termites to enter the tree. Deep within lies the colony's pulsating heart, the termite queen. She produces a ceaseless flow of eggs to keep the colony growing and issues a stream of chemical commands to govern her subjects. Workers stack and tend the precious eggs in nurseries. The eggs will hatch into more workers and soldiers to protect the colony. Once a year, however, a special brood is produced. These will be able to breed and will leave the colony to become new kings and queens and start colonies of their own. Workers form the largest class, laboring endlessly, turning the eucalypt's structural heartwood into energy that drives the entire colony. Their sharp jaws slice through tough fibers, and the hind gut breaks it down into digestible nutrients. Some goes to feed other termites, the queen, soldiers, and juveniles. The massed jaws of the worker brigades swiftly excavate the heartwood, chewing their way up inside the main trunk and out into the branches. The waste is molded into more galleries and egg chambers. Within a few years, the eucalypt is completely hollow. Some of the hollow branches will be used for didgeridoos, traditional wind instruments crafted by the Aborigines. Now the legions move out, digging tunnels to seek fresh supplies in the surrounding trees. They too are hollowed out, and the colony grows ever larger. The termites appear to be parasites, but in fact, the hollows they chew out are a kind of payment for their board and lodging. Hollows attract birds and other animals to nest and shelter. Their spillings and droppings make valuable fertilizer. The trees absorb these bonus rations and grow well in the soils of this higher ground, which are otherwise extremely poor. The dollar bird takes insects on the wing. It migrates from New Guinea and joins the local birds to take advantage of the nest holes created by the termites. Altogether, the leftovers and litter of nesting birds, like these forest kingfishers, add up to a feast when taken into the bowels of the tree. The curious fruits of the partnership with termites provides these eucalypts with nutritional benefits other trees don't receive. As well as birds, half the local mammals use hollows as lairs, turning the trees into well-stocked larders. Aboriginal hunters need only a fire stick to smoke out the game. Night reveals other hunters. Some holes excavated by termites make nurseries for quolls and their young. When they're nearly fully grown, the youngsters go piggyback when mother goes hunting. For the young quolls, catching insects and keeping them are the first big steps on the road to independence. The adult quolls tend to use the same hollow all year round, and when they come home, the waste they excrete helps to nourish their host, an organic form of rent. But eventually, the termites weaken the tree so much that fire or a storm sends it crashing. The termite castle smashes open, and armies of green tree ants come racing in to devour the workers. The sudden onslaught temporarily overwhelms the termite soldiers, but soon they'll repel the invaders and rebuild the colony, if the queen has survived to produce more offspring. The season moves to Wergen, hot, still, and no rain. The floodplains are dry, the streams stop flowing, the waters withdraw to deeper swamps and aimless creeks known as billabongs. The magpie geese follow. For the first Australians, the sight of such vast flocks meant more than abundance. Watching them and stalking them inspired dances of a natural grace, matched only by the birds themselves. Trumpeting, tossing sprays of leaves, the Australian cranes dance around the year as part of courtship at breeding time and to enhance the bond between pairs whenever the birds flock together. The dry season tightens its grip, but the mud around the swamps remains soft enough for the cranes to dig up fibers with their long beaks. In a week or so, it'll be too hard, and the birds will move on. These stately waders breed in the wet season, when it's easier for growing chicks to find food. By contrast, hunting birds like sea eagles build their nests and have their chicks in the dry season, snatching up nesting material with the same easy swoop used to catch fish. Working is a hard time for the water creatures. The diminishing lagoons cram them together and make them easy to catch. The eagles hook up fish and turtles almost effortlessly, keeping their young well fed. When the wet season returns, it'll bring an abundance of other game, especially newly hatched goslings, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for the young eagles to learn to hunt. The season changes to Gurung, the hottest time of the year. The flying foxes prepare to give birth. The baby's head has just emerged, and the mother arches upwards to clean it with her tongue. The baby may stay like this for more than an hour. It's a tense time for both mother and young. Should the newborn fall, it will be to its death, for many predators lurk nearby. When finally all of the baby emerges, the mother has to be ready to catch it. And she does. This youngster, at least, is safe. She cleans off the last of the afterbirth and helps the infant find her nipples, located in the armpits, where it can cling in safety when the mother goes flying. Barbed growths inside their claws help young bats to hook into the mother's fur, and their teeth curve inwards to hang on to the nipples. Independence comes swiftly. Even at 2 weeks, it's already trying for its own grip on the tree. Until the young bat's ready to fly at around 3 months, the maternal wings always remain ready to enfold it and keep it safe. The wings help the flying foxes to keep cool. They fan the air, and folded make an excellent heat shield. The searing heat has sucked all the moisture from the swamps and floodplains, and the only water left is in the permanent soaks and deep billabongs. Birds from all over the region converge on these precious oases. Red-tailed black cockatoos wander from soak to billabong in search of a drink. Aborigines believed the flaming red of the tails was fire, the means by which the birds carried it around the land. While all around the plains lie parched, these last wetlands provide rich bounty. Each billabong attracts its own progression of visitors. Each bird's bill is designed to harvest different food at different depths in different ways. This jabiru stork has caught a water snake. As the waters recede, the birds need to keep moving to find the food that suits their particular way of feeding. These royal spoonbills come to feast on the rich broth of this shallow lagoon, sweeping through the water to sift out small fish and crustaceans. Pelicans flock together on a deeper billabong and scoop up schools of fish with their capacious beaks. Cormorants patrol alongside, ready to snatch any that escape. There are as many fishing techniques as there are birds. A pied heron takes extraordinary steps to secure a safe vantage point. The waters fall even further, exposing new crops of food. The plant-eating birds have their feast now, and flocks grow by the thousands every day. The sound of the whistling duck is made by voices and wings together, rising and falling as they move between grazing and resting. The massed song is a spectacular celebration of the great fertility of these northern wetlands. Clouds of birds darken the sky over the last remaining waters. Now's the time, too, when magpie geese a symbol in their hundreds of thousands, a sure sign that the first storms of Gunamalong are not far away, that the season's coming full circle. The vanishing water leaves great stretches of soft mud with abundant bulbs and tubers for the birds to rip up with their hooked bills. The massing of the magpie geese is one of the biological events that marks the turning of the seasons in the far north. For the first Australians, it became part of the calendar, which set the rhythm of their own rounds and celebrations. Knowing the nature of the land was basic to their survival, but in learning to live with it, the skills they acquired and practiced over 2,000 generations set profound changes in motion. Fire became the symbolic center of their spiritual and ceremonial life, their tribal temple. Far from being a timeless people in a timeless land, their impact was as great as that of any people on earth, and their chief instrument was fire. Aboriginal burning altered the mix of plants in the landscape. The fire-tolerant eucalypts extended their hold, and the woodlands opened up. As the Aboriginal people grew in numbers and spread across the vastness of Australia, the migrations were marked by trails of fire, and the hunting birds, like the brown falcon, that followed them. The fire skills perfected in the monsoonal north were carried to new terrain and different climates. The fire stick reached into every plant and every animal community in every part of the continent, from the coastal regions to the dry interior. Many animals profited from the changes. Many others vanished for all time. In all this vast land, there were less than 1 million people, yet in their 50,000 years, the Aborigines' way with fire changed the face of the continent. Evil spirits, they called these willy-willies, but they were tornadoes of ash and dust unleashed by the heat of their own fires. Now a new storm was about to break. The whirlwind of the European invasion would race across the continent with unprecedented speed and pose the most severe challenge yet to the nature of Australia.